Latvian TV channels will broadcast advertisements during the performances of Russian and Belarusian athletes at the Olympic Games in Milan. Although they are competing without national symbols, once again, athletes with pro-war views have made it to the Olympics. Neither this year's Olympics nor many previous ones have stopped the Russians from continuing the war, even though the Games are traditionally considered a time for peace. The Olympic Games in Milan are already the fifth in which Russians are not participating under their national flag. This year, 20 athletes from the aggressor country and its accomplice Belarus will compete under a neutral flag. However, according to investigators from the company Molfar, at least 4 Russian participants have direct ties to supporting the war against Ukraine. In particular, there is evidence of training on occupied territories and open anti-Ukrainian propaganda on their social media.
The athletes support the war online, liking and reposting posts, but for some reason this is not considered a sign of supporting the war. I also don't understand how an athlete who is fully funded by a government engaged in propaganda can be considered neutral.
Russians and Belarusians were suspended from competitions after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. However, they reappeared on the international sports stage at the Summer Games in Paris in 2024. On the eve of the event, the International Olympic Committee allowed them to participate on the condition that they would not display any national symbols. However, even there were Russians who definitely did not protest against the Kremlin's aggression. Nevertheless, Olympic officials keep repeating the mantra that sports are outside of politics.
We are a sports organization, we are outside of politics, but we are not isolated from the world. Our task is to provide a neutral platform for competition, where sport remains the main priority and every participant can compete freely.
This is how freely Russia destroyed civilian infrastructure in Ukraine with missiles and drones, while dancers at the Olympic opening ceremony were depicting the dove of peace. In ancient Greece, wars would stop during the Olympics. For Russia, however, the competition is clearly just a cover. Russia invaded Georgia on the very first day of the 2008 Beijing Olympics. The annexation of Crimea began during the Sochi Winter Olympics. In February 2022, Putin went to Beijing to sign a gas deal with Xi Jinping. 4 days later, when the Olympics ended, he attacked Ukraine. All of this is in the best Soviet traditions. In the 80s, Moscow refused to withdraw its troops from Afghanistan despite the boycott.
I informed the International Olympic Committee that due to Soviet occupation forces in Afghanistan, the American people and I oppose sending the Olympic team to Moscow.
Neither the Olympics nor the boycott nor neutral status prevent the Russians from staging provocations during the Games. A few days before the start of the competitions in Milan, the local Minister of Foreign Affairs stated that the National Cybersecurity Agency had repelled an attack specifically by Russian hackers. And during the Games in Paris in 2024, Russian influence groups on the internet spread fake news criticizing President Macron and allegedly warned about the threat of outbreaks of violence. Putin went even further, attempting to create an alternative to the Olympics. First, there were the so-called BRICS Games in Kazan in 2024, which foreign participants simply did not attend. The Russians competed among themselves, surrounded by hired crowds. The dictator's next idea, the World Friendship Games, also failed. The international community did not want to be friends, and the IOC strongly condemned these competitions. Not a single world federation recognized them, leaving Russia in sporting isolation. Katerina Yeliseyeva, Podrobici, Inter TV channel, United News Marathon.